On April 26, 1913, Mary Fagan was found murdered and possibly raped in the basement by night watchman Newt Lee. She went to pick up her wages for that week before going to a big parade, but never made it out. At the crime scene, 2 notes were found. One read, "He said he would love me laying down like the night, which did it, but that long, tall black Negro did by himself." The other read, "Ma'am, that Negro here down here did this. I went to make water and he pushed me down that hole. A long, tall Negro. That who it was, long, slim, tall Negro." These were far below the penmanship of Mary Fagan and couldn't have been written by her. Soon after discovering the body, police had 4 major suspects: Newt Lee, the watchman; Jim Connolly, a janitor at the factory; Leo Frank, the supervisor at the factory; and John Nat, a former worker at the factory. Frank was the only one arrested and prosecuted. Frank was only arrested because he appeared nervous to the police and said he was in his office 20 minutes after Fagan left, but another young worker said he wasn't, even though numerous people confirmed his alibi and saw him around the factory that day. He was arrested on this amount of evidence, but the janitor Connolly was found washing red stains from his shirt and gave 4 contradicting statements and admitted to writing the notes, but was used as a key witness for the prosecutor. Newt Lee, the watchman who discovered the body on the way to the colored restroom when he usually broke the rules and used the white restroom upstairs. Also, to make sure the watchmen don't fall asleep on the job, they were to punch a time clock every 30 minutes. But in between the time of 9:30 and 3 a.m., his time card was irregular. They also found blood-stained clothes in his home he claimed that he hadn't seen in 2 years, but it was found that the blood was less than a month old. And when he called the police, he said he would like to report a white girl dead. But when the police arrived, the body was so dirty they had a hard time identifying the race. John Nat, who openly admired Fagan and was fired from the factory for stealing, came to get some shoes he left in the locker. Frank allowed him to come in and was found with luggage trying to leave town, but only Frank was prosecuted for the murder of Mary Fagan. The Frank case was highly publicized, and the people were always looking for the next announcement or update.
You would stay tuned to see the latest bizarre, frightening development.
We call the People versus Leo M. Frank.
Prosecutor Hugh M. Dorsey painted Frank as a bisexual rapist and used Connolly as a key witness after they held him for weeks, interrogating and questioning him under Dorsey's orders.
She had her clothes up to here. Mr. Frank was down on his knees. She had her hands on Mr. Frank.
Jim Connolly was mesmerizing.
The statement of the Negro Conley is a tissue of lies from first to last.
If Frank hadn't been a Jew, he never would have been prosecuted.
Guilty! Guilty!
Connolly told a riveting story about Mr. Frank, portraying him as a bad person. The jury consisted of 12 men, including 5 Jewish men. They were highly influenced by public and personal opinion, and that played a major factor in Frank being convicted. On August 25th, in a unanimous decision, Frank was found guilty and sentenced to death. Frank tried many appeals to the Georgia Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court, but all were denied. Soon, the governor of Georgia, John M. Slayton, became involved in the Leo Frank case. Frank was asking for his sentence to be commuted from death to life in prison. Slayton reviewed the evidence of the case and viewed the pencil factory where the murder took place and decided Frank was innocent. This enraged many Georgia citizens. Many people began having riots and marched to the governor's house. After his term was over, a few days later, him and his wife boarded a train and left the state, not to return for a decade. Some angered citizens eventually went down to the prison where Leo was held and hung him on the night of August 16, 1915.
They saw themselves as an arm of the law.
It was everyone's worst nightmare.
How did that happen? I wished I had the answer to that.
Leo Frank couldn't have had a thing to do with it.
That my vindication will eventually come, I feel certain.
Is there nothing you wish to say?
Ma.
The Leo Frank case was a very controversial and unfair case. It was filled with many errors and mistakes during the trial. First, they arrested Frank with little evidence linking him to the crime. Many believe it was because anti-Semitism was very high in Georgia, and at the time it didn't help that Frank was from the North and was helping to turn a rural society into an industrialized town. There were numerous outbursts during the trial by the spectators in the courthouse, and they were also surrounded the courthouse and threatened jurors by saying, "Hang the Jew or we will hang you." The prosecutor, Hugh M. Dorsey, was no better. He was only using the case to become governor and was willing to use false evidence and lying witnesses to do it. The main witness, Connolly, changed his story 4 times and was held and interrogated for about 2 weeks by the prosecutor. Connolly was very cunning.
Southern stereotypes about the ignorant, bumbling black man played into his strengths. He was not dumb. He was not slow mentally at all. He was very smart.
I swear for God and I don't know a thing.
What, do you know how to write?
No, sir. I don't. I never could.
Will you swear that?
I sure will.
They asked him about the notes. He said, "I can't read and write." That happened to come up in a conversation between the police and Frank said, "Of course he can write. I know he can write. He used to borrow money from me and sign promissory notes." So Connolly had not been completely honest with the police.
Some believe that the Atlanta police botched the little evidence they had against Frank, and it was known that Fagan's autopsy wasn't conducted until 9 days after she died. But with all this false evidence, lies, and tampering and harassment, it only took jurors 4 hours to come to a unanimous decision to convict Frank. But when the governor finally did commute Frank's sentence, people became enraged. They made models of the governor and hung them from trees, calling him King of the Jews. And somehow 25 people stormed a 4,000-acre prison and traveled more than 100 miles with Frank without being stopped by anyone, and finally lynched him in the oak tree near Fagan's hometown and took pictures of him hanging and turned them into postcards and stamps to be sent all over Georgia. People will debate on Leo Frank's innocence or guilt for years to come. There are numerous books, websites, and articles protecting the side that they believe, but guilty or not, his trial was unfair. The Leo Frank case also inspired an organization called the Anti-Defamation League, which is an organization to help fight for people's civil rights that still exists today. Mary Fagan's murder may never be solved. Was it really Leo Frank that killed Mary? Or was it Newt Lee, Jim Connolly, or John Nat? We may never know what actually happened that night. It was an abundance of confusing information. We may never know if Leo Frank is innocent or guilty.